I was in the bench, or on the bench as they continually correct me, when I heard the most dreaded of all birthday sounds. About 20 tone-deaf sports experts and about half as many barbershop quartet wannabes from the bench, all singing Happy Birthday. To me, presumably. "Oh, wow, you shouldn't have," I managed to say in a way that I'm pretty sure sounded grateful, as they made their way into my office, holding a monstrous cake ablaze with 30 giant candles. "Happy birthday, dear Cadie," they belted. "Happy birthday to you." I waited for Kevin Lamont, who was carrying the cake, to set it down on my desk so I could blow out the candles, but he just kept holding it. Kevin, of course, is now the host and executive producer of The Daily Dribble, the most successful show on ASN. He's also the vice president over all primetime programming for the network, which makes him my boss. But back then, he was simply The Daily Dribble's host and one of my absolute favorite people around the ASN offices. And though he's gone a bit gray and put on a little around his midsection, he certainly hasn't lost a centimeter of height from his NBA days. "Make a wish and blow out the candles," Kevin teased as he held the cake at his shoulder height, which is still at least an inch above my head. "Well, I'd love to, but—" "Here, Cadie," Max Post, resident sound engineer extraordinaire, chimed in as he pulled a chair over to my desk. "Climb up here." "Very funny, guys," I replied with a smile. "Come on, Kevin. All of the wax is going to melt down onto the cake." "You'd better do something about it then," he insisted as he jutted out his chin toward a couple of former linebackers. In an instant, the linebackers had grabbed my arms and hoisted me up, not onto the chair by the desk, but onto the desk itself. I was so grateful that after 6 years at ASN, I knew better than to wear a skirt to the office. "Very funny," I repeated, as I did all I could to remind myself that I loved my job, and that it wasn't my coworkers' fault that they were savages. They meant well, and I knew that everything they were doing was an attempt to show me that they cared. They just happened to be from a culture in which you showed someone you cared by snapping them with a wet towel in the locker room. I was ready to end the spectacle, so I took in a deep breath and prepared to use every bit of power my lungs could muster to blow out those 30 massive candles in one fell swoop. But just as I released the pressure of air, Lindy Mason called out from the hallway, "Hey, everyone! Montana's here!" Kevin turned his 6'9" frame toward the door, and my cake went with him. "Happy birthday, Cadie!" scattered voices called out as they left me in favor of Joe Montana, who was on the field for an interview. An interview that they'd been waiting months for, but that only about 8 of them were actually required to be present for. The others were just going as fans who happened to get paid to gawk at their heroes. "Sorry, McCaffrey," Kevin said as he shrugged and handed me the cake. "Et tu, Kevin Lamont?" He smiled and winked as he said, "Next time, don't have your birthday on a day a legend is scheduled to be in the studio." And then he ran out after everyone else. Perfect. I held the ridiculously large cake in my arms and tried to figure out how to get down. I had learned not to wear skirts to work, but unfortunately I still insisted on wearing heels. "Now what?" I asked of absolutely no one. I sighed and looked at the chair next to the desk. I wouldn't be able to see where I was stepping due to the sheer magnitude of the cake, so stepping down onto the chair was out. I decided instead to squat down and place the cake on the desk, but the combination of the weight of the cake and balancing on heels made me very wobbly. I felt myself losing my grip on the cake as I teetered forward, the cake that still burned with the light and heat of 3 decades worth of candles. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," a voice called out from behind me. Before I knew what was happening, he had one arm around my waist and the other under my cake. He gently lowered the cake onto the desk and then looped his arm under my knees. Pretty instantly, I was back on the ground, on my feet, but there was a brief second when he was carrying...